Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of Season Ticket Holders. I'm your host, Dane Lillingstone, and I have a new and very special guest for us today. He's a South Sydney Rabbitohs supporter, UFC aficionado, Taekwondo expert, the Grand Master he's been called, and he doesn't mind a wife beater. Zac Link, welcome to the show, mate. How you going?
Dane, it is excellent to be here. It's been long in the tooth, and I'm very, very happy to finally be here on Season Ticket Holders.
Zach, very well said. He's a politician, ladies and gentlemen. Zach's been wanting to come on the show, and he knows so much about UFC. He's very deep in his knowledge, technically breaking fights down. I don't know if there's too many better people I talk to regularly about that type of thing, but he's an absolute gun, as I think you'll all find out over this show. Now, Zach, the big talking point, obviously, we'll get into the Australian card being announced, UFC 325, and you'll be headlined by Volkanovski and Diego Lopez, but we've had some stacked fights announced for that one. But firstly, we just did obviously have 323 on the weekend, and a couple of big shocks, mate. Petr Yan, Merab Dvalishvili, stunned. I mean, what did you make of this fight? I thought it was going to be Merab by decision, by takedown, over and over and over again. Petr Yan, probably a little bit forgotten based on his recent record and sort of the stumbles he had along the way. But were you shocked to see Yan just put in a completely one-sided 5-round decision?
Oh, look, I mean, when I was watching it, I was kind of a little bit in awe, always waiting for that moment, like versus Nurmagomedov, he pulled it out of the fire from round 3 and onwards. So I was kind of expecting something like that, for Dvalishvili's pace to start to wear on Yan. But I mean, this is the problem with activity, isn't it? Like, this is his 4th defense for the year, which is obscene.
A record, a UFC record, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, well, I suppose it would have been. But I mean, in terms of like title fights, it's a ridiculous pace. And I think that he was honestly, the way I described it to people after watching it was kind of a victim of his own hubris. And I know that sounds a bit rough, but to think that you can start lapping the division is one thing, and has been right thus far. But to think that you're going to go in against someone like Yan, who has had, gosh, I don't know, well over a year to prepare for this exact moment, this exact fight. I think this approach from Merab has been very successful to date, but it isn't, without fault. It isn't without moments of weakness. And I think that ultimately bringing the same approach, this one-size-fits-all pace approach, has finally caught up with him. And I'd be pretty surprised to see if he can bounce back from this without changing up something quite significantly.
Yeah, mate, you touched on it there, but 4 fights in the calendar year. I was going for a record as far as defenses go. Umar Nurmagomedov, I remember we watched that fight together back in January where he did lose those first 2 rounds. Backs it up by submitting Sean O'Malley in the 3rd round back in June, and then decisions Corey Sandhagen. That was back in October, so just over 2 months ago. That was in Las Vegas. So do you think, you touched on it, but you'd think that probably just did catch up to him, right? He's known as the Machine, the Terminator, his cardio. I know there's plenty of social media videos floating around about how much he runs and how much work he can get through, but 4 championship title fights in a year, that'd mess with anyone, right?
100%. And look, I don't think at the end of the day, it was his cardio that failed him. I think that Yan just made an adjustment that most strikers couldn't. I think everyone had always put too much focus into these weak moments where Merab will shoot for a single leg or he'll throw the jab into a very predictable takedown. And I think a lot of strikers just, at the end of the day, you've got your Sandhagens and O'Malleys that thought that they could take those moments and capitalize, whereas Yan didn't anticipate on catching him. He anticipated on being able to thwart him in his approach, keep it standing, and he knew he'd outstrike him. So I don't know, with Merab, he'll never be as good a striker or as fast a striker as these other bantamweights, but he certainly he's been figured out in this instance, and it was largely just because Yan had taken weight off his back foot and made sure that there was enough distance that he could sprawl effectively, and just had prepared almost perfectly for this game plan.
I was shocked the amount of takedowns, not as many as the UFC said he attempted, but just the amount he went for it. The fact that we just haven't seen Merab go like that and just not have any success. The Arn's takedown defense was just incredible, right? Like the way he was able to stay on his feet for a guy that we've just come to know in the last 12, 24 months takes people down at will. Can't all necessarily hold them down, but he can take you down. And that's how he's been getting it done. I was absolutely shocked. But did we sleep on Yan, mate? That's where I was getting with this, because I remember him coming up. He beat Jose Aldo back in July 2020 to win the vacant bantamweight championship. Then obviously gets that DQ against Aljamain Sterling. We all know how that went. Gets a win over Corey Sandhagen, but then he goes on a stretch of 3 straight losses. Sterling to a split decision, O'Malley to a split decision, and Merab to a decision back in March 2023. You probably think, well, I don't know, how good is he? He obviously bounced back with 3 straight wins to get back over Marcus McGee, Davison Figueiredo, and Song Yadong. But did we sleep on Yan a bit, mate? Because I certainly did.
I think it'd be near impossible not to have slept on Yan. I mean, it not that the skill set he brings hasn't always been impressive, and not that he hasn't always been a very powerful striker and has good movement, but considering all the Aljamain controversy, we'll say, he was beating Aljamain pretty handily before the big knee. And then Aljamain was just able to have that much time to become the sort of blanket he needed to be in that fight, shut down the powerful striking, etc., etc. And then a pretty good performance against O'Malley that obviously got overshadowed by a few big moments, and the fact that O'Malley had won, which was clearly my assumption is what the UFC was angling for. And then it's been easy to sort of put Yan to the back for a while. But ultimately, I think what the story of this is he's had that much time without cameras, without footage of him actually fighting. I think that that's what's benefited him in this fight. That we didn't know how the preparation would be, but he's had a lot of time to think about the first fight.
Yeah, crazy, man. I just, at the end of the day, I just did not see it going this way. I was just really blindsided by the entire fight, how it went. But I mean, amazing performance by Yan. Can't take anything away. It was a war, man. And the way he was striking with him, and Merab was giving it too. Not like he laid down, he was giving it
Yeah.
back, but he just could not stand and strike with Yan, right? That's a different level. Like you said, made some really nice adjustments and just couldn't get in there. It's going to be interesting. I'm sure Merab will want to bounce back pretty quickly. And for Yan, if he can keep doing stuff like that, he could be in for a bit of a run. Mate, I just want to get into the co-main. Obviously, devastating for Alexandre Pantoja. Puts his arm out, like I'm sure so many people would do, to try and stop going down, and they show that elbow. And the UFC, when I say show that elbow, they showed that elbow again and again
100
and
times,
again
yeah.
and again. There was like 3 big screens. We're at the Lions Club in Brisbane, near my local back in my hometown. And mate, we were all just cringing every scene. It looks getting worse and worse with each replay. The way I know they came out and said shoulder, but the way that elbow just, yeah, I know. I don't know what they're going on the shoulder. That way that elbow just sort of like there was a gap in there. What did you
Yeah.
make of it, mate?
Oh, mate, watching that was truly horrific. I happened to be with my missus watching it, and I couldn't tell her when to look up because it was just replay after replay. And the messaging afterwards around the shoulder, I was like,
I don't
real
know where
saw
they
what
got that
happened. I
from.
don't know, but no, what do I make of it? It's terribly sad, I think. I've always rated Pantoja. Even before he was the champion, I believed he was good enough to be the champion and had a bit of a tough run of things. He has been consistently one of the most underrated and underappreciated champions we've seen in the UFC. I think everyone and their dog probably thought he was going to win this one a little bit handily, even though we all love Van. We love Van. We love that sort of excitement. It's really disappointing to see Pantoja go out like this because, one, we don't know how long he'll be out. But given his age and how long he's been a champion, you've got to think this might be a little bit of a nail in the coffin. I really hope that that's not the case, but it's just devastating because, I mean, if and it never is, but if the first 20 seconds of a fight is something to go off, I think we're in for something really special, and I think he felt very confident.
I was so keen for this fight, man. Van's
Mm.
obviously been on an incredible tear at 24 years old. He became the second youngest UFC champion behind your GOAT, John Jones. Uh,
We're not doing that.
uh, and I had a lot of respect for Pantoja. It's almost like he was getting better with age.
Mm.
He is 35 years old. He won the belt back in 2023 against Moreno. Then he's been pretty active since then. Roy Val, Steve Urseg. We know he was probably a round away from losing that one, but found a way to dig deep and get the job done. And then he was coming off 2 pretty nice submissions against Kaya Sakura and Kai Kara France, where he really dominantly defended that belt. He was going in the favorite as this one. For Van, pretty incredible rise made. He's now 16-2. That was his fourth win this year, so pretty steady rise after
Mm.
making his UFC debut back in June of 2023. So to be 24 years old and to already have a record of 18-2, pretty incredible rise, right?
It's absolutely insane, and especially given the style he brings to the octagon, I think that that's it makes it all the more impressive. I think we watched that fight together versus Royval, and just lumps out of each other, like just exciting from woe to go. You never, I will say, admittedly, I never looked at Van and thought championship material. I always thought very exciting to watch. Would never miss this guy's fights. And I fully expected Pantoja to take him down and really work him. And we can't really know that that would have been the case, but we can assume pretty safely that Pantoja's been there before and done that. It's obviously wildly impressive for his age and his style, and the fact that he was pretty unanimously loved walking into this one. But you know, I have to say it: get off your coach's shoulders. Get off the octagon fence. How dare you? How dare
I,
you? I
I,
get that you're excited, but come on, mate. Like,
I, I was going to ask you about that because I know he did cop some heat because, I mean, even just
mm,
watching it in the pub, you could see he was celebrating like he'd done this amazing knockout when it was just a
yeah.
very, very unfortunate injury. And he was getting on the cage, like you said, on the shoulders. And like, I'm sure there's some people that didn't, you didn't like it?
I didn't like it. I mean, look, I understand you can be overwhelmed, especially for his age and how quickly he's come up and the fights he's had. That's not conducive to a really long career, the kind of fights he has. So it's very impressive. But at the end of the day, you've just faced off against the guy and didn't really have a moment for as long as it went. And then he's broken his elbow in front of you. It's ultimately disappointing. You know, you're surrounded by people that have paid good money to come and watch this fight. And given how far he's come, you'd think he would just want to be the better man, be the better fighter. And
Humble.
that wasn't proved. And I can't imagine being like really wrapped with that. Obviously happy for him. But, when your opponent at, what is a pretty senior age for the division is sitting there writhing in pain, having just not given the opportunity to defend his belt, you know, it's a bit much.
How about the reaction though, mate? Because if any human being on planet Earth actually did that injury, they wouldn't just hold their elbow and then just put your hand up in the most calm way possible and say, no more, no more, no mas,
No
senor.
mas, yeah.
No mas. Like he couldn't have been more calm. I didn't hear him cry. He didn't yell. He just like popped his elbow disgustingly out and
Mm,
went, yeah, fuck it. I can't fight. Stop, bro.
yeah.
Pretty incredible, man. But very unlucky. I was hoping Pantoja, he was building a legacy. He still has that legacy. And I'm
Mm.
sure he'll want to get straight back into it. He needs a direct rematch or whoever it ends up being when he can come back. I'm not sure how severe it is, but like you said, age isn't on his side, 35. You don't want to go through such a nasty injury like that. It is a worry. Um, that segues nicely into the other flyweight battle that was right before this fight in Tatsuro Taira against Brandon
Mm.
Moreno. And mate, I've never seen Moreno manhandled like this before in his career. It's the first time he has ever been stopped. I'm just looking at his record then. He's had 9 losses, 8 decisions. That's the first time he's ever been finished. And what a
Mm.
way it went. I had submission, and he was locked in because that rear naked was there the whole time. And then, but good on Tyra, he decided he wanted to finish with punches. Now, some people did say it was a bit early. What
Mm.
was your thoughts on the fight?
Well, look, I mean, in the interest of transparency, we spoke almost immediately after, and I said way too early, obscene, and what I think that what was most impressive in that fight was that Tyra is pretty unstoppable. His scrambles are insane. The way he gets to the back in no time at all is genuinely impressive and looks like it took Moreno by surprise. I thought the first round was a bit, you know, how you going? Moreno caught obviously a very good position with that triangle or pseudo triangle, which didn't really tell us anything about either of the fighters. I thought Moreno looked more comfortable on the feet, but you are right. We've never seen Moreno put in a position where he couldn't defend himself like that. I did think it was a touch early, but if I'm being pressed about it, I don't know how he would have escaped that position at all.
Yeah, I mean, it was exciting. I mean, that triangle was a
Mm.
bit weird. That sort of held up that first round, and he had it pretty like locked in too.
Yeah.
But then obviously dominant performance by Tyra, and he should fight Van next, right? I mean, I'm excited for that fight.
It's true. I mean, I always feel I'm a bit of a purist in the sense where it's like we're not seeing the best fight the best, but I mean, it is fair and it makes sense depending on how long Pantoja is out. But yeah, Tyra, I mean, it was a bit of a strange performance because we didn't learn too much about him. I mean, it was like we knew how good he was at getting to the back. We know how good of a submission threat he is. But yeah, it'll be a very interesting fight versus Van because I mean, it's we talk about striking versus grapplers, but this is very much purest striking versus purest grappling in the sense that it's submissions first punch you in the head. I think it. I'll definitely watch it. I'll put it that way.
Well, Tyra is now 18-1. He lost a split decision to Roy Val back in October 2024,
Yeah.
and then was coming off a nice face crank of Park Yong Sung. So he's had a pretty steady rise himself, mate. He is only 25, so it's a real battle of the young guns in that flyweight division. If that fight does get made, which it looks like it probably will. But it was exciting, mate, for the flyweights. They like to bang, and yeah, I very surprised, but I was very happy to see a new young up and comer in that division. Bantamweight, mate, Peyton Talbot ending the career of Henry Cejudo. Plenty of thoughts about. I know it was a great fight. That plenty of
Yeah.
thoughts about Cejudo and the King of Cringe or whatever you want to call him. What did you make of the fight first? Because it was a banger.
Yeah, look, I mean, I think it'll make it 3 years that I've been, like, professing my love for Peyton Talbot. I think he is the most exciting fighter at the moment. Maybe near, like, Salkild, but we'll touch on that. But, like, I mean, Peyton Talbot is a phenomenal striker that fights at a ridiculous pace, and when he was asked in the lead up to this fight what the game plan was, he just said spirals. And I was like, what does that mean? And then I realized like it's all like the way he strikes, the cadence and the rhythm and the way that he defends takedowns, it's truly beautiful. And I'm glad he got an opportunity to showcase those skills and to showcase the skills that he's now learnt based off his only loss, which you and I happen to be sorry enough to watch.
Yes.
He's definitely gotten better. And sorry to watch Cejudo dispatched like this, but at the end of the day, if it doesn't make sense on paper, it probably doesn't make sense in the octagon.
I mean, that was 4 losses in the row. That means he's finished his record 16-6. Obviously, former bantamweight, flyweight champion. Will go down with a great legacy in the UFC, whether you loved him or
Oh,
hate him. I can't say I was ever a massive fan or got particularly excited for his fights, but obviously plenty of love on what he was able to do inside the octagon. A nice little package they played for him after the fights. And mate, just to round out the main card, Jan Blachowicz, the best ping pong player in his neighborhood against Bogdan Guskov, majority draw by all reports. I actually did miss this fight, but for a draw, pretty good, I hear.
I thought a draw. Look, I mean, no MMA fan ever likes to hear draw, but it was. I think if there was ever a draw, that was a draw. At the time, I really thought Guskov was getting the better of Jan, because I mean, look, Jan's prime has to end at some point, right? Like he's just an animal. His power has carried through. He's never really done anything very differently, but it keeps working. And yeah, at the end of the day, the much lighter and faster Guskov was trying to time 1-2s the entire fight, which is working very effectively. And Blahovic has that legendary Polish power that seems to always just find the mark. And you'd be hard pressed to argue that that wasn't a split decision. It was kind of like around a piece. And then the last one was just too close to call. But I think both fighters did themselves a favor with that fight. Both looked good, and both, I think, one, Jan extends his longevity in the UFC, didn't really look in trouble at any point. I mean, obviously he did with Gustav dropping him at one stage, but his endurance is crazy, and he was pressing as hard in the first as he was in the third. And there's always been question marks around Jan's cardio, so it was very impressive. And Gustav looks like the next generation of light heavyweight.
I mean, I just wanted to touch on Jan first because, yeah, like you said, he's 42. He hasn't had a win now since 2022, and
Oh.
he's had 2 draws in his last 4 fights, and then he's had 2 losses to Alex Pereira and Carlos Holberg. So, yeah, I'm sure he'll want to get a win soon, but I still love watching him fight. You touched on Bogdan. He is now 18-3-1. He's had 4 wins in a row leading into this fight, all finishes as well. So, obviously, one to watch there. We weren't going to touch on Victorians and Barboza, but maybe a bit of the maybe they need to go to. They were the early prelims, former title challengers who are pretty much near the end.
Oh, I mean, near the end is a complete understatement on Barboza. I mean, we're watching the ghost of Barboza come out there every time, and like every time, inevitably you see the press package that says in his best shape ever, aging in reverse, and it's like, yeah. But his style is one that is seems to be quite dated, and it relies on attributes that he simply doesn't possess anymore. You can't say it tarnishes his legacy because obviously his legacy in the sport is sensational, but you'd really like to see him start to call it now, I think.
It's that fighter's curse, right, mate? They always go a couple too many, and it is sad to
Mm.
see. I remember that spinning back kick from many years ago now, but all-time UFC moment. Now, mate, to a lovely part for us Sydney siders here because they did announce or reveal the rest of the main card for UFC 325, Qudos Bank Arena, February 1, Volkanovski v Lopez 2. We talked about it on this show with my good friend Tom Hayfield last week, breaking down the fight. We all know this probably shouldn't be the fight, but it is, and the rematch. I can tell you aren't happy with it. So do you want to just get it off your chest? When you heard this was going to be Volk's next fight, what were your thoughts?
I think you put it very aptly, mate, but it is. And that could be the banner on the poster for this fight. Huh. It's hard because, I mean, you've got Volkanovski, who's clearly a company man, always has been, will take whatever fights in front of him. You got Lopez, which why would he ever say no to a title shot? But
Mm-hmm.
everyone knows this is not the fight to make. This is not, it wouldn't prove anything but so as to cement that Volkanovski is either still capable of beating Diego Lopez or that he's just aged to the point where he can't stop from getting hit. And it doesn't I often look at these things in terms of like what would we think in the future? Volkanovski, if he loses now to Lopez, this will not prove anything. It will not even look great if he does win. We will know it's great because we know how good Lopez is. But if you were to zoom out on Volk's career, you've just got him in rematch after rematch after rematch after rematch after rematch. And you've got to start thinking like, let him cement his legacy. Let him fight some of these up and comers. Let him teach that. Let him be the one that teaches them the lesson of the levels. It's just you're giving Diego an opportunity after being thoroughly outclassed for 5 rounds to come back and try again. Try something a little bit differently. So you've got to think that maybe the UFC just wants this kind of outcome. And I think that that's why it's most disappointing.
Yeah, and I totally get that, and I will get in a second because I did get the chance to interview via Zoom Diego Lopez, who's a very nice guy, no matter what Australian fight fans might want to think about him. But Volkanovski, like we all know the story, he did call for Movsar Evelev after that fight. He was pushing for that. He said he can only do what the UFC puts in front of him. He is the official #1 contender. Diego Lopez is too, and obviously Lerone Murphy, both undefeated prospects. I'm sure Volk would have other people would probably be bullshitting, but Volk generally would have been happy to fight either of those guys if given the opportunity. Now, I can tell you what Lopez told me today. He said if you look at those top 5 rankings, he said that he's the most lethal and most exciting and the most likely to be a danger to Volkanovski. So that was his comeback or defense. I did ask him, I put it as nicely as I could, what do you say to critics who say you don't deserve this fight? And basically, he did give me a little bit of sledging for it as well. He said, well, you can go and cry because I'm basically going to be fighting for the title. So he doesn't care. He generally believed that he is the most exciting or biggest threat that Volkanovski could have had in this division, no matter what all of us MMA armchair pundits or even former fighters are going to say. I heard Lerone Murphy on Ariel Helwani, having a bit of a whinge about it, and I haven't heard much from Evelev himself. But I'm sure, obviously, very disappointed. He is right about them not being particularly exciting fighters, although Murphy is coming off that stunning
Hmm.
knockout as
I
well.
mean, yeah.
Yeah, but Evelev, I totally get. I think he's just decision, 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 but dominant as well. And at the end of the day, is it entertainment? Or, WWE, or is it should these be on merit? And if you're an undefeated fighter and you're getting overlooked for a guy who lost to him 2 fights ago, is that fair?
Oh, look, I don't think anyone but Diego and maybe his mother could make the argument that this is fair. I mean, it feels a bit like if I shoot a basketball from the half court line 50 times, I'm going to sink one probably.
Maybe.
That's what this fight feels like. You had the opportunity and now you've got another opportunity, another 25 minutes to make it happen. You know, it might, but would it prove anything really in terms of skill for skill? You've got to make this sport at its core needs to be a meritocracy. You've got to have people like Evloev and Murphy fighting for titles, even if you think that they might lose. That's not the point. And why doesn't Volkanovski deserve to teach a lesson in Sydney for the first time ever, defend his belt in Sydney against someone that's new and fresh and exciting? And I fear that Volkanovski has always struggled when he's not excited for fights. It always. It's been the story of his career. So, I mean, I hope he can find the motivation. I wish he would acknowledge that this might be his last fight, because even that might provide that sort of fire, I think.
Well, on that, because both men, UFC's on the PR front foot coming out this week, and the big storyline that everyone was asking Volk was there were rumors floating all around that this could be his last fight. He hasn't fought in Sydney since 2017, obviously fought in Perth against Islam a few years ago, but like you said, never defended the belt here. So it is a big moment. He's obviously from Wollongong, Windang, an hour and a half out of Sydney, just down the road. Is getting on in age. You know what he's going to say. He's going to say that he's not planning on retiring. Of course, Volk's going to say that, mate.
Yeah.
We all know what's to come to know from the great. Uh, so it is going to be interesting. He shut those talks down throughout media throughout the last few days. Did a press op near the Harbour Bridge on Wednesday. Shut it all down. Like I said, I talked to Lopez, asked him. He said, well, whether he wins or loses, probably, is going to be the story. Obviously, he is the champion. Did beat Lopez to win the title again. So it is going to be interesting. For Lopez, mate, I can tell you, very nice guy, very chill. His English was pretty good. He only needed the translator to help him with my questions a couple of times. But he said he's a better fighter than he was. He's learnt from that first fight. He said, it was his first real war, 5-round fight. He didn't know what to expect. And he says he's learnt from the experience. He saw some holes in Volkanovski's game. He thinks he's going to be able to exploit them. Obviously, he's saying everything that every fighter should say in these situations.
Mm.
And said that he did deserve it. He genuinely didn't seem to care about the noise, that he doesn't deserve to be in this. And at the end of the day, I've said this to you a few times. These fighters can only fight what the UFC puts in front of them, right? Like, as much as we make these matchmakers and think John Jones is ducking or whatever it may be, you can only do what the UFC matchmakers
Yeah.
put in front of you, and that's all these two guys are going to do. Volkanovski's taking on the chin. Diego gets a second chance, even though pretty dominant loss in that first fight. It's going to be very interesting to see. Now, mate, what we did get was the most of this fight card for UFC 325. Dan Hooker versus Benoit Saint Denis. That's going to be a cracker. I don't know about Hooker's chances, but at least we've got two exciting guys, right?
Yeah, look, I mean, I love Hooker and I love his demeanor, but I do think that it has been his demeanor that has gotten him in a lot of trouble in the past. I like that he's making a quick turnaround. I like, you know, but I I love to watch Dan Hooker fight, but I think it is too soon. I think just based off the beating he just took versus Sarukian, I don't think it makes any sense at all for him to turn around. I get that he wants to fight in Australia, makes sense from that perspective, but I mean, Benoit is not someone you want to be facing on what would probably seem like a pretty quick turnaround. Right after Christmas, you want to spend some time with the family, and I know Dan would. It doesn't really make a ton of sense. I don't love his odds, but Dan has never failed to surprise me with his performances. We've seen him take some excellent fights with Gamrot, one that I don't think anyone really expected him to win. So maybe he surprises us, but you've got to think that Benoit's style is pretty much tailor-made to maybe thwart someone like Dan.
Coming off a 16-second first-round knockout just last month. So it's going to be very tough. Mate, Tai Tuivasa back. Bam Bam is back, baby. August 2024. That's when he suffered his fifth straight loss. We weren't really sure whether we'd see him again, but I've seen him looking a bit trimmer, mate. He's only 32, even though it feels like he's been around for a very long time. He's going to be up against, now, mate, I don't know how much you can tell me about his opponent, Taliesin Teixeira.
Teixeira?
Teixeira. There you go, mate. Do you know much about
Yeah.
him?
Look, I know a bit about him. I've seen him versus Tougher. I've seen him versus a few other opponents, and I'll be honest, mate. I don't I don't love this fight for Tai. Teixeira looks like an absolute weapon in there. His striking is ridiculous. His power is ridiculous. I've thought about this fight a lot. I like the fact that I like it for Tai that it will definitely be a striking contest. But Teixeira brings this excellent sort of Muay Thai style and ability in the clinch that I don't think Ty's used to. So Teixeira will bring that sort of skill set. He will bring power, athleticism. It's so hard to call. I just think Ty's style is they're almost identical, and Ty might just be a little bit over that, over the hill, so to speak. I really hope that we see a Tai Tuivasa win, but I don't think if you looked back historically, Ty's record in Australia is phenomenal. So
Well, I remember being there in Sydney. When was that? Against Volkov. That was back in 2023. Got submitted in the second round.
yeah,
Didn't put up too much fight. His last fight was in Perth. That was in August 305
mm,
against Rosenstrike. The split decision, so it's not like he got dominated that one, but he'd been finished 4 times in a row leading up into that fight. You got to go
yeah.
back to the Derek Lewis elbow knockout back in February 2022. So he needs a win. He needs a win. But in saying that, Western Sydney, baby, bring it on. He's going to be back in Sydney, which
FTA.
is cool. It's gonna be good just to see him on the Australian card. I think they know what they're doing with that fight. I could see it being his last fight. I mean, how many losses can he take? Stacked with Aussies, mate. Obviously, Junior Tafa's on this as well. Now, Quillan Soulkill, we were going to talk about him. You mentioned before coming off that incredible knockout. When was that? It wasn't even that long ago, man. Only a couple months ago. To come
Mm.
see him back in the UFC against Rongzhu. That's just one name. Chinese fighter, Rongzhu. Good to see our boy Soul killed back.
Yeah, 100%. Look, he is so exciting. And I've got to be honest, as an Australian MMA fan, it feels like we were in this a bit of a limbo period where it was like, Whitaker's probably winding down, Volk's winding down, Ty's winding down, JDM's just lost the belt. What's next? I think Salkild is next. And I think watching him strike is awesome. And he's been tested on the ground too. So, I mean, it's not like we're going to be hugely shocked if someone brings that sort of game plan, but the way in which he's finishing these people is crazy. I mean, like the timing, the speed, the hands and feet, like he's just getting it done. Like, and he doesn't look too concerned about much in there.
Was a first round 2.5 minute head kick knockout. That was
Mm,
back in October, mate. He's now 9-1, quickly rising up the rankings. Very exciting to watch. Um, just touching on Jacob Malkoon, another Australian on the fight. I mean, it's stacked with Australian fighters. It's going to be pretty good to watch. Jimmy Crute as well, I should mention. He is in there as well. And
mm.
then on the main card, didn't say Mauricio Rufy and Rafael Fiziev. So, I mean, for Sydney cards, the last few they've dished up, both were headlined by Sean Strickland. This is the best one we've seen, right? At least in recent years.
100%. Look, I mean, for a while, all of the Australian cards followed a very similar formula. We'd watch we'd watch Jake Matthews, we'd watch Tai Tuivasa, and we'd watch them all lose, in pretty bad matchups. But they would populate the main card. I'm really happy to see that we're seeing fighters like Fiziev and Rufy come, because obviously, there's always been a bit of a tax implication issue with these sort of fights. So it's really exciting to see some real stakes. I think that, one of the most compelling reasons to get into this fight or just making sure you watch it is Volkanovski's exit. I think that watching him exit the backstage into the arena will be one of those all-time moments for Australian MMA fans. So that alone could sell these tickets, but it's really great to see that we've got a few great fights underneath as well.
Mate, 100%. Like, I've been to the last two headlined by Strickland, and there was a couple top heavy fights, and then they really weren't giving us much at all. But in saying that, tickets have gone on sale this week. Officially on Friday, there's been a pre-sale. It's all been happening. I had a lot of friends from Brisbane and Cairns who are very excited to try and get tickets, make a whole trip of it. Obviously, Qudos Bank Arena in Sydney isn't the biggest indoor arena. I think it's something around 20,000.
Mm.
Not massive. And obviously, the tickets have been filtering out the last 2 days. Now, I've heard words like price gouging and a few other things. And obviously, the UFC knows that they're going to get people to pay for these tickets. I mean, I'm just looking on the pre-sale right now. You can get a seat at the very back of Qudos Bank Arena for $666. If you want to sit at the front of the back, $849. All the best seats are currently exhausted. Right now, you could get a floor seat at the front at least for 1,500. So pretty crazy prices. I mean, people would think UFC fans are, the stereotype, but they know that they've got people there with a bit of cash as well. What were your thoughts when you saw the prices? Because I think just about all of my friends pulled out when they saw how much these tickets were going to be.
Up until this morning, I didn't know that there's a price I wouldn't pay to watch Volkanovski fight, and I found out today that it's about $3,000. That's heartbreaking as a UFC fan. I mean, it's it's just ridiculous prices. It's ridiculous prices for a fight that, what many would consider a really tough one for Volk and one that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So I mean, it's a really tall order to make people pay. At the time I was looking, they were upwards of 1,700. Some of them. It was just ridiculous for a single ticket, and it's quite sad because you want the real purists to be able to go and watch this. And it should be like that. You want the rabble, you want the people that are going to be populating the pubs now at the event, and it's obviously quite disappointing to not see a bit more, um, I don't know, equity in those tickets, even in the nosebleeds. We're not talking like a couple hundred, it's just a bit crazy because a lot of these tickets, let's be honest, are not ideal for viewing.
Mate, if you're talking about those $600 tickets, I mean, I've been to Qudos Bank Arena a few times. I was there recently for a concert for Rufus. I've been there for the last two UFC events. Luckily, I get to work in a working capacity for media, but I was very much considering buying a ticket and really enjoying it as a fan. But when I saw the prices, I was like, Jesus, no, like it is ridiculous. And I do feel bad for the people who do get priced out. But I guess Uncle Dana, at the end of the day, they just know that it's about 21,000 seats with floor seats. I just checked. They know that they're going to sell this out. Well, pretty much they're going to sell it out. I don't think they did the last two, but you can put Alexander Volkanovski on anything. To me, it's just devastating that you couldn't put it. I know it's hard. The UFC doesn't do this much anymore, but an arena, a stadium, something, because at least more than 20,000 people, you could put
Mm.
Volk anywhere in Australia in a major city, you get 50,000 plus. It's just a real
They
shame.
could, yeah,
Yeah.
100%. They
And
could put it in a stadium.
and the lights and the show that the UFC put on, I've been a part of it a few times. It's awesome. It's great what they do. The production values are incredible and insane. I think it's probably the best produced sport in the world, just about. And what they do, I know they want to keep a high level of that, but they do charge too much money. Like, it is ridiculous that so many people have been priced out of this event for a guy who's the best fighting export we've ever had, and
Mm.
people aren't going to really be able to see him unless, I don't know, you're just rich, parents' money, or you're a doctor, lawyer in high class Sydney, or you're selling a few things on the side, mate. Whatever it may be, that you pick your poison. But it's just ridiculous, right? And it's very sad because UFC fans, you would think they are just like the normal battler type people, but they're very much just pricing those people out.
100%. And you could say that the UFC has, been complicit, to say the least, in perpetuating the rumors of Volk retiring. So I think that they know very much what they're doing, and I think they very much know what kind of an opportunity this is and how deep people are willing to reach into their pockets. And it's a bit disappointing to see, but no doubt you and I will, if you're not covering the event, be in a pub somewhere, showing just as much enthusiasm.
Mate, unfortunately, all the pubs around Homebush are shit as well. So it'd be nice to even be near the event, but that sucks as well. It's a dead zone out there.
Yeah.
I love sports, I love stadiums, and I love Sydney too. But they need to do something about that ghost town that's out there. And yeah, it's a real shame. But mate, Sporting Globe in Sydney, still waiting for my sponsorship. All Star Casino, I'm very well easy to be bought. Salisbury Hotel in Stanmore, why not? We'll throw it open to anyone. We're getting desperate.
At
Zach,
least lift the ban. Yeah.
it has been a pleasure having you on, mate. We do a lot of striking together. We've both been a bit absent lately, but I hate taking your kicks. You got a nice liver kick, mate. You're about 10 foot taller than me as well, so it's a bit hard with the reach, but we'll have to get back into it soon, eh?
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Dane. And hopefully this was usable.
It will be, mate. I told you guys, he knows his fighting, he knows his fights, very technical, loves watching breakdown videos and things like that. So I'm very happy that I finally did get you on, mate. I know you're a massive UFC fan, and hopefully we can work something out for UFC 325 in Sydney.
Thanks for having me, mate.
No worries, mate. Take care. Thanks for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Please give us a like and follow on social media. Take care. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.